Welcome to the Cyber Call, the podcast by Ride at Boom for managed service providers looking to stay ahead in an ever-changing world of cybersecurity. Each week, we dive into the latest threats, trends, and real-world strategies to help MSPs protect their clients and grow their businesses. Let's build a safer, stronger community together.
All right. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome. It's good to see you all. I'll just ask that if you guys could give me a yay, nay, that you can see and hear us okay, as always, as we let people come on in. As always, we will do a little bit of banter before we introduce our guests today. We have the awesome Jonathan Crow and Alan McDonald back as co-hosts, so I'm excited about that if you joined us last week. And by the way, this whole CMMC, pause is blowing up in terms of social content. So it's really interesting what's going to happen here. Today, from a banter side, thanks, Ann and Ed. Appreciate you guys letting me know you can, hear and see us okay. Today, I wanted to talk about something that just caught my eye. It's something I keep kind of a keen eye on because I think it's really critical for MSPs to be aware of this sector and segment. And that is this announcement about nuclear energy. Similar to a lot of MSPs' focus on the defense industrial base, in order for us to keep pace with the energy demands of data centers to support AI, the Trump administration has put forth proposals and basically reducing the radiation restrictions that have been around for years. Now, this doesn't mean we're just going to be reckless. It just simply means that the regulatory framework to support something called ALAR, and you can read more about it. I'll put this in chat. They are going to be eased quite a bit. And the reason they're doing this, aside from what I just shared to support AI and data centers, is because China currently has 10 times the nuclear capacity that we do. And we are in an arms race, whether you know that or not, or believe that or not, because it is certainly something underway. And the last thing I want to mention, I just tried to pull a really interesting, who is, upping their game that, MSPs can focus on, because I do believe this sector from an SMB perspective is something MSPs can really benefit from. And I just wanted to pull, for example, this manufacturer I found in the Midwest that is vastly increasing their capacity, their manufacturing capacity to support the nuclear build out that we're about to see over the next decade. So with that, Alan, I thought it'd be good to turn to you first as an organization, an MSP that supports municipalities, water, et cetera, and just to get your thoughts on this. Is it an area that you feel could be, if not today, something that All Connected keeps an eye on and focuses on potentially?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Well, like you'd mentioned, our primary focus is on water and municipalities, although we don't primarily deal with the energy sector today. The IT/OT infrastructure is very interesting to us to support, and the energy sector would be a potential next place for us to go. Whether or not the build out scales as the news suggests it might today remains to be seen. But again, the energy sector, oil sector are very kind of adjacent areas for us to potentially explore.
Yeah, Jonathan, I know. You don't necessarily keep these are the licenses being sold at Ninja. That's not your job as head of community. But knowing that you guys have, a big, organization that has, mid-size and larger companies using your platforms, if you were to, put a bet down in Vegas, is this something that the organization is probably going to look at, like, hey, who's growing Sal's pretty smart man. You have people from manufacturing like GM, that type of people on your, in your executive team these days. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I love that you see news like this, Andrew, and that you jump on it and you're immediately like, okay, what does this mean for the MSP world, right? How can people take opportunities? I love that that's where your head goes, and that you get these discussions going. So that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that manufacturing has been, we see our partners who are selling into manufacturing growing, certainly. And we also do see some direct cases too. I think what we were talking about a little bit before we went live, I mean, for something like this, I think back to the CMMC, right? And there are some early folks who saw the writing on the wall there and decided to make a big bet, right? And it took a considerable amount of effort and investment. We talk about differentiation all the time. We want to be seen as different. Well, in a lot of cases, you actually have to be different to be seen as different. You actually have to, there's some risk associated with that and some real investment. And this, to me, kind of lines up with that, maybe there's folks like Alan who you're in an adjacent industry and you can kind of see the path forward there. There's going to be some folks who are able to hop on it right away. And then there's going to be others who kind of see it as like, well, we can go on in here, but it depends on the risk appetite because I don't know, doing anything based off of government regulations these days seems to require much more than my penchant for forecasting,
Yeah, good point. Ian, before we introduce you formally, which we will, I think we should go to Vegas or Polymarket and throw, our entire life savings on this one way or another. What are your thoughts?
Oh, no doubt. That sounds like a sound piece of advice for all of your listeners.
Oh, no.
No, I mean, it's fascinating. Also, I mean, if you've seen waves like this before, ultimately the expansion of any sort of power source, nuclear in this case, is, and what I'm watching more closely is it's a bet on the long-term sustainability and impact that AI is going to have in all of our worlds, right? We need that power, not just for the sake of having more power, we need it for AI. And so this is a bet on that future as well. But if you're grizzled and old, you also remember massive infrastructure projects like the laying of fiber many years ago, where most of it's now dark underground, but people made a pretty good amount of money for a period of time laying the fiber. And so there are roles to play and opportunities to harness in the massive expansion of infrastructure. To Jonathan's point, though, it's pretty volatile right now too. So get long-term contracts locked and hold on for dear life.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think the fiber is a great analogy. My analogy to the fiber is the data centers. I think we're going to overbuild data centers, but I do think we're going to be short energy, just in the compute need that we're going to have to do it. And the fact that I don't think, if you in your local community, I'm already seeing it here in Tampa as an example. Ian, you're here too. I know our friendly TECO provider is just, really making sure our energy bills, just stay right, nice and low.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, they've literally, I think, almost 1.5 times summer over summer. So throw a data, more capacity on AI. And I think people are going to get more and more upset about their, hey, my energy costs are through the roof because AI is demanding so much.
And I'm subsidizing mega companies that are making trillions through my utility bill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Keith brings up a good point, Andrew, with hey Keith, it's good to see him here. But yeah, I mean, like he's, the beauty of specialization and bringing together a service that really has a lot of intentional, he's got the experience there. He can provide a specialized service, and it's allowing him to charge a lot more than just the average MSP, I think.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let me set the stage. Let's get on into it and introduce our guests for today. So right now, and I've joked, I've had the great pleasure to meet Ian probably a few months, probably like 3-4 months ago now. And, we've sat, we've talked, both at conferences, at Starbucks, and over the, phone. And, the common theme, and I'm sure as MSPs, and I know Alan verbatim has heard this from mid-size customers, which is, we need to implement AI right now. Alan, you got it from a customer where the board directed it, and all of a sudden you're sitting in a room that's going on. We need it right now. But when you start to ask questions, what are you trying to accomplish? There's no plan, there's no process, just a mandate that we need to do this right away. And if that sounds familiar to MSPs that have been around for several decades, it should. Ian, you've heard this, I would say, 3 times now in the last 2.5 decades when it comes, whether it's your specialty, which you started in business process outsourcing, to robot RPA, and now in agentic. So, the author, and I'll know you tell a little bit about this when you introduce yourself, of a book called All Hands on Tech. I'll put the URL along with Ian's LinkedIn profile shortly. But welcome, Ian. I know you're going to be doing some awesome AI workshops at Write a Boom, where people can get a better understanding of how to have that conversation and not be the department of no, have a sound framework to implement this stuff successfully. So with that, welcome. Tell us a little about yourself, your background, and again, welcome to the Cyber Call.
Perfect. Thank you guys very much. It's a pleasure to be here. As you said, and it's so lovely meeting you, and lovely hanging out in various conferences and in Starbucks, and covering all this. My background, as you mentioned, I've spent about 25 years in services of some form, consulting at first, outsourcing next, and then into automation in whatever sort of flavor and type it took over the last 15 years. And I was always focused on innovation in whatever delivery of service I was privileged to be a part of. In the outsourcing space in 2013-14 timeframe, automation appeared, and I was just in the right place at the right time and got to play with some cool new things, and as a result be one of the earliest to test these things out. And the rest is history. Started a company in 2014, grew it, sold it, and I'm doing something similar now, just because I'm having a lot of fun, love building teams, and I do not know how to play golf. So the only thing left for me is entrepreneurship.
Fair enough. If you could just humor our audience, when I met you, you were telling me about how you moved from, beautiful California to Tampa, and can you share with everybody the reason? Because I thought that was one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
It's sweet of you to remember my sarcasm. Yes, so I was living in Northern California when I was one of the founders of this business. I sold it to a call center business that is no longer here in downtown Tampa, but it was a large $2 billion revenue publicly listed company. And they gave me the opportunity to become part of the C-suite. So I moved my family. But the joke I made was that in talking with my wife, we decided that Northern California, the things it didn't have that we were really looking for were crippling humidity, mosquitoes, alligators, and cockroaches that fly. And so all of those boxes were ticked with Tampa. And so we just said yes, signed up immediately, and here we are. So.
Yeah, Alan, we're waiting for you. I mean,
Yeah. Keep waiting.
Palmetto bugs, man. They look at you. You have a sense that they are thinking. They're plotting and scheming, and then they fly.
Yeah.
Wow, guys.
All right, Jonathan, I'll let you take over.
Oh, great. Okay. Ian, first of all, it sounds like a BuzzFeed quiz you got delivered the answer for. So cool that I'm back here. Thank you again, Andrew, for having me. And this topic is one I'm super interested in, not just from all the flashy newness of it, which by this point, I mean, there's new flashy newness about it to be talking about all the time, but in and of itself, I mean, we've been talking about AI. We've been having these conversations for a while now, right? And one thing that jumped out to me, even hearing you talk about the nuclear opportunity that Andrew brought up, you mentioned cycles, you've seen things happen before, right? And I know this has come up in a lot of conversations by very smart folks about this topic that, AI is a tool and it's technology at the end of the day. And that's what we're in the business of doing, right? Is using technology to solve business outcomes, to generate business outcomes, like Keith is saying. Right. So we've seen, business process outsourcing, RPA. We've kind of gone down this path. We've seen iterations of this before. What are some of the similarities? Are there things that are truly different this time around? Are there things that are the same in that once you have that question, that the clients want AI, but oh wait, it's not magic. I have to actually do something about that too and get my own shop in order. I'm not as interested.
Yes. Yeah. It's been interesting. It's sort of my junior year abroad. I'll go way back to when I was in college. I stumbled on a course called Organizational Social Psychology. I thought it was fascinating. So I think about things through that lens. So if you're an organizational psychologist and you're looking at just like the human factor that comes into play, it seems like every one of these waves, we sort of almost willingly fall for the same narrative. And that narrative often is that you can kind of buy your way out of a problem. And often a problem that you just haven't committed the time to truly understand. And so BPO was moving work to other locations. They could be down the street or across the globe. RPA was, for those who are not familiar, robotic process automation, was workflow automation, which was emulating the work people do. And then AI now, that's a huge topic we'll get more into, I'm sure. But we kind of just hoped that we could sort of ignore the problem and then with sort of unbridled aspiration and optimism that whatever the newest thing is that we get will relieve us of having to actually solve the underlying situation. And it actually, while thinking about this discussion in BPO, in outsourcing, we used to be called, and it seemed like a pejorative, but it summed up what we did really well, but we used to be called your mess for less. And if anyone hadn't heard it, they think they get the biggest kick out of it. But your mess for less. And effectively, it was the underlying statement there is your operations are a dumpster fire. And so by outsourcing it, you get great talent somewhere else at a great discount. And they just do what it is you handed them. So, it's still your mess. And you didn't give us the remit to transform it. Your systems are your systems. We've had no autonomy to do anything like that. And so your mess for less. And that same concept moved with each new wave. So automation was often your mess for less. It's just, what do you do now? Let me sit down next to you, watch you, and then codify it into workflow automation. And now you're seeing that once again, rinse and repeat with this supposedly brand new concept called a forward deployed engineer. I mean, who would have thought that sitting next to a practitioner and studying what they do and then using a tool to emulate it was not new, but it runs the risk again of just your mess for an even more powerful and seemingly capable less. But it introduces all sorts of risk and compliance issues and vulnerabilities and all sorts of other lovely things that RPA didn't, because it was kind of brittle and simple. Still really valuable.
Yeah. Ian, you missed Jonathan. I don't think you're on for this, but Brian Blakely was on with Ian, and I think he said it basically is bringing stupid at scale, right, Ian? So.
Well, I mean, and again, there was sort of a religious discussion almost about, do you improve things before you automate them, or you just automate them, because automating them made them just go faster, and that's great if that which you're doing is decent or good enough, right? But if it isn't, then you're just doing it at scale.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see. Andrew, you mentioned, Alan, that you'd gotten this directive from a client recently, and it came from their board. So it's even the directive is even another step removed. It's not that hey, we think that there's some promise here, we want to explore. It's like, we're being told to do this thing. Mm-hmm. And so I'd say a step removed. Yeah,
I'd say a slight clarification on that, Jonathan. The board request, it wasn't necessarily just to go implement AI, but rather it's a request from IT to say, we want a strategic plan on how to adopt it, how to implement it within the business before any future FTE requests would be approved. So IT's put at a standstill to expand or grow the department So I would say, like, yeah, the board doesn't know how to swing the hammer, but they know they want to swing it, and they're leaving it up to IT to figure it out.
But Alan, in this case, true or false, when you walked into that meeting, they had already committed about 150 grand. In other words, hey, here's 3 hammers and go start looking for nails. I mean, fair paraphrasing?
No, absolutely. A PO was cut for the next, fiscal year.
Yeah.
And so
invest, figure it out. Here's some money. Get started. Yeah.
Which, I mean, hey, opportunity, right? I mean, how can we actually use this to get some of the stuff we know needs to be done, done in a way? So, I mean, Ian, back to you with when you're in a situation where there's suddenly an opportunity, however that opportunity comes about. And right now, a lot of them are tied to AI utilization, right? Or maybe they've already committed. What are we using these licenses for? We got to get actual value from it. Let's go. What are some of the questions that you toss back that folks may not always want to answer?
Yeah, I mean, to Alan's point, we bought a boat. Let's get to the top of that mountain. I mean, like, what are you trying to achieve? Like, why do you want to do this? It's not too complex a question. Why? I mean, and interestingly, so your clarification, Alan, was an interesting one in so much as, okay, it wasn't just a random act of AIification. They wanted a strategic plan. And then they tied that strategic plan to a hiring freeze, which implicitly or otherwise suggests that AI is there to replace humans or do exactly the work that humans were doing, which is already making a statement about what it is that I think it's here for. Which, again, let's go back to why. Is that why? And without that clarity, then you're just buying the next shiny thing, and that's always worked so well. So, sarcasm.
Yeah, I mean, my cynical take with a lot of this stuff is that people that it is coming ultimately, not always, but in a lot of cases, it's coming from that place. The end that it's how can we get more efficient. Read between lines there. How can we reduce headcount? Right?
It reminds me, Ian, of, and I think all 3 of us, or myself plus the 3 of you, remember when EDR really kicked into high gear. Do you guys remember everything was filtered with ML? Like you couldn't, it was ML and that was ZTNA, and it's now there's not a software site you can go to that doesn't have the AI flavor in it. So it definitely, again, I've said this many times, history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. And it seems like we got a good rhyme going here. Do we not, Ian?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, this reminds me of the phone call I ranted to you about. I could go into if you want me to, but yeah.
I have that in there and as a question, the Teams call. So I think.
Yeah, let's hit it. Let's hear it.
Yeah, this was. I've reflected on it since, Andrew. So I've brought my thinking into a little bit more coherence and less ranting. But I found this. I thought I'd bring a visual for all those watching. But while cleaning my wife's very much in need of cleaning minivan this weekend, I came across one of these. If you remember these like bingo cards that made road trips fun, where you'd find like a cow and a stop sign and whatever else. And I think about these when I'm on these calls, and it'll make sense in a moment. But I joked with Andrew that I was on a call with the leadership team, the CEO and others in the team, the joke was I didn't realize that Microsoft Teams allowed you to hold calls in 2016. And the reason is because literally there's a checklist that I bumped into back then that is the exact same checklist that I bumped into throughout that call. I've come up with seven checklist items that, if you'll indulge me, I'll run through. And some of them map to what Alan was just saying. So the first one was almost always this initiative is a mandate from the top. All right, it's just their executives or their board or their investors that they got to do this. Usually in the old days, it was somebody just came back. The CEO came back from a conference and told their COO, we need to do RPA. And then their COO would Google, what is RPA? And then they would begin their journey there. So always a mandate from the top. The goal almost always is to 10x the people that they've got, right? Just do much more with the folks they have right there. Or in Alan's case right now, it's hiring freeze because this is going to replace those people. So great, we're going to replace people. Let's not transform organization. Team, third one. They always want experts, absolute experts in a field that's literally months old. So this discussion I had that I mentioned, that they were looking for one of the latest and greatest frontier models, and they wanted experts to help them in that field. And there's, they don't even have them in their own organization or in the parent organization that's making the model. Fourth, destination. They never know where they want to go, but they sort of know where they want to go, but they don't. But it's changing, right? So like there's current state, but actually transform. They want it to be a different end state, but they're not sure what that is yet. They're still designing it. So then when I ask them, okay, well, you've mapped the processes you currently have, right? You know how you do what you do. Nope. I mean, no process is mapped. Or if they do say they have them, they never manifest. They don't show up. Timing is always now. It's if you even put a reasonable program in front of them that says, okay, for the next 6 weeks, we can, they're like, no, 6 weeks, we need now. You're like, I can't do it now. We got to start. We got to talk to people and interview them. And by the way, the people we're about to interview won't be available, and we're going to chase them to get them on a call. And then they're going to be on holiday, and then someone's going to be sick, and then they're going to still not give us the processes we need. So now is just confusing. And the last, but certainly not least, tool. They've already chosen it. They've already decided, I just came back from the hardware store and I just bought the shiniest hammer possible. Let's get going. And you say, all I see here is screws. And there's but we just bought this hammer. And it was that. I relived that same thing on the call. And I guess to conclude and make this even a longer rant, Andrew, of those 7, I made the point of following back up with them 2 months into a 3-month-long initiative where they needed to be done by the end of 3 months, and they have done absolutely nothing in the first 2 months. They haven't decided on a partner. They haven't mapped any of their current processes. They haven't gotten to redesigning or transforming that aspirational future state. They're stuck. And so it just the appearance of speed and in progress just keeps getting in the way of that, the classic slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? Let's just do methodical things that are appropriate. And by the end of a quarter or a half year, we'll have done things. But no, right now, the cadence has got to be now. And as a result, very little actually manifests.
If you let me indulge you with this.
I'm done with my rant. Thank you.
I'll let you and Ian banter this. He also showed me something really fascinating. He brought up a post, I think, it wasn't X then, it was Twitter, Ian, but can you just briefly, because I want Jonathan to be able to ask your questions, but talk about what was it, KPMG or
no, this was a not even rhymes. This is just absolutely resembles. This was and of the frontier models now, OpenAI and Anthropic are both launching these large AI consultancies, and the AI consultancies are there to deploy, right? They've got forward deployed engineers. One of the companies is straight up called the deployment company. There is no mystery as to what they're here to do. They are here to shove that particular tool down your throat into your organization, move licenses, max, tokens. And this is Anthropic in the earliest announcement. I was on the very first Anthropic partner call where they were starting to get everyone excited. And the example they showed was this big deal they had done with PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, the consultancy, to give sort of agents to every one of the consultants. And this was, This was 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, they did this. And so I just pulled up the Twitter post of when UiPath, the sort of the big name in the robotic process automation space, 8 years ago, announced a robot for every person program with PricewaterhouseCoopers, in which they rolled out hundreds of thousands of RPA bots that were going to be by the side of every one of the consultants at PwC. I'm like, how's that going? And so, the mechanics of it is their tool is fine. It was great. But this idea of just blasting it out and having everyone all of a sudden have an antiquated, deterministic workflow automation robot now is what we think of them as, or an all-powerful, frontier model robot, the underlying is still the same. It's still people who are struggling to get their job done, who aren't being given the remit to do interesting and new things, who also have no incentive. Like, why the hell should they spend an extra hour? That's not their day job. And so it just, the grumpiness in me just says, well, that's going to go just as well as the last time. We'll see. I could be very wrong.
I love your list. That's fantastic. And like I mentioned in the chat, that's like the drinking game, or I picture Leo pointing or whatever. So yeah, it's the bingo. Man, so fantastic. I'm sure a lot of people in the chat like nodding their heads too. So my question is, I mean, one of the benefits of that from your perspective, being able to take yourself out of the immediate, here is all the urgency, here's everything that this is different. You see the pattern, right? Yeah. How can folks use that to their advantage in terms of these conversations, and not jumping at it? Obviously we have you can have your own reaction to these requests, be like, yep, I've heard this before, and you can roll in your eyes at stuff. But obviously that's not going to play well with the client. How do you utilize, like, okay, I've been down this road before, I've seen this before, I know where this is going. How do you utilize that to your advantage in these conversations?
Yeah, so grumbling and growling at the client's not a good idea.
That's not going to do it?
Oh, that explains a lot, actually. Now that I reflect on it. I mean, again, I resist the whole sort of in my day, old guy, let me tell you about the last 15 years, because that doesn't generally resonate and it just makes it sound like you're grumpy. But ultimately, there is undoubtedly a tremendous amount of enthusiasm and also undoubtedly a tremendous amount of value and impact that can come from this. And everybody knows that laying the foundation stones is a solid way to get started on building anything. And so you just make all of those fundamental initial stages part of the overall now AI everywhere program, right? And so it's not and I saw this in RPA. Whether it succeeded or failed, the one thing that RPA did for enterprises of all sizes is it provided them a lens through which to look at their daily operations and ask questions that they just hadn't in a while. Right? And why are we doing this? Is it routine? Is it mundane? Is it transactional? Is it system-based? Is it standardized? And those acts of self-reflection created value just in and of itself. And this wave is no different. And so use that as positive, but I mean, we have generally an order of events that really does start with that sort of assessment, starts with a healthy amount of just mapping, effectively, just knowing where you are and what you do today, because only then are you equipped to do really valuable things rather than just rocking up and, just throwing stuff at a blank canvas that ends up being, that's science projects, right? That's experiments. It's sort of fun and almost always fails.
Do you have, going back to that not being the Department of No, right? Having that reaction of like, okay, well, let's slow down. Let's go to the basics. Like there's things we want to do first. There's a discovery period, all those things. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, I mean, what I find really interesting with the MSP world is that I mentioned this last week on the call, Andrew, before it was, okay, the boss's nephew is like pseudo IT and they've asked him to do something and it went terribly wrong. Now we have to fix it. Now it's like, well, the boss's nephew got really into AI and says we can do all this stuff. Yes. You're dealing with people who are selling the same thing that the big companies are, right? Like, mm-hmm. You are wildly behind already. We have to move fast. And then if you're coming in saying, well, actually, let's be more measured about this. Let's slow down. How do you navigate that to make sure you're not that Department of No or slow, you're the slow ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think whatever's happening is going to happen no matter whether you try to stop it or not, right? There's an inevitability of this experimentation. I do think that's good, right? It does enable people to look at themselves and look at those opportunities. You just have to harness that. Right? In some cases, and I think for MSPs, this is a tremendous opportunity to walk in and learn about what it is they are already doing, because the activities of what they're doing today are really they're a byproduct of what they know they need and the challenges they're facing and the opportunities they've long tried to to harness. And it just so happens it's a little easier now because of AI, because of the democratization of it. But it doesn't mean that they're going to do the fundamental steps well. So you can step in and help them succeed, help that boss's nephew become a rock star.
Ian, I'd like to ask Alan a quick question. You mentioned something just now that had really perked up my ears. Alan, you and I have talked about how, historically it's someone like yourself who's the CEO of MSP that's really, has the chops of understanding how a business runs, hence why, business sales-led organizations by the business historically have outperformed, hiring salespeople or technical account managers. But does this potentially give some wind in the sails of those technical account managers to teach them, hey, like this is your opportunity, your moment to start talking about the business, learn about what they're trying to accomplish versus always about, hey, you're out of alignment and we need to put in widget X or widget Y. You're out of our alignment, so you need X.
Yeah. I think that especially now, more than any other time in our MSP journey, that's important. And as a lot of the MSPs I talk to have matured, they've really worked on two different types of relationships that are critical to maintain in the business. You've got to maintain that relationship with the IT staff or the IT decision makers, but you sure better have the discussions with the executive team about risks to enterprise value and opportunities that you see with building enterprise value. I do think that as MSP owners, we're more equipped with that because we're looking to do that within our own organizations. But the client success manager role or that type of role in the business is one that has a lot of opportunity to, I think, advance and find new revenue streams, both for the MSP and for the clients that we serve.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. Jonathan, I'll let you continue.
Yeah. I mean, I have one other question for you, Alan and Ian too. I mean, like and Andrew, I mean, the focus, with the cyber call and security, I mean, it's really fascinating to me hearing people talk about one of the differences. There's lots of similarities with the boom in security and providing those extra services and the types of conversations you need to be able to go higher up into the org and talk about risk. And those are still absolutely apply today, right? But the one of the differences in AI is that, instead of doing risk audits, it's almost getting you back to doing kind of like, well, what are opportunity audits? What are things that we can do to move our what we're providing you, not just in terms of governance and risk, but also efficiency gains and productivity and, utilizing technology in those ways. And so it seems like a really cool opportunity. It seems like we're really primed to be able to take advantage of it in some of these ways. But Ian, I mean, again, you've seen this kind of happen before with RPA and everything. And here we are, if that had been all completely successful, would we still be talking about this right now? Or is this cyclical in that way? Was there something that didn't happen there that needed to?
There's a lot, and none of it had to do with the technology. Right. I mean, in any adoption, any change at all, ultimately, RPA was just a catalyst to, again, self-assess, to look at that which is value adding, understand the processes. And then there was, we had a framework way back when that intentionally had a simplify stage before an automate stage. And the point there was that re-engineering opportunity. How do you look at an organization to figure out how to simplify, streamline, re-engineer, or just straight up remove processes? The number of times we'd be in client workshops and realize they were doing a thing not that could be improved, simply doing a thing that they didn't need to be doing anymore. And so just that act was paid for the workshop, frankly. And so there was a lot of value from that era. I believe that's still, organizations aren't all of a sudden optimized and running like tightly, oiled machines in the last 10 years because of some RPA workshops. So there's still a lot of opportunity to have those discussions about what does good look like. I think as an MSP, you're in a unique position as long as they allow you in to have those discussions, partly because, again, you understand a part of their business. You've been privy to it. You've been granted access to how they do some of what they do. you've been experimenting yourself, so you've got your own sort of anecdotes and stories you can share with them as they also tinker. I mean, your nephew is probably building something in your shop as well, so share stories, and then really be the partner that enables safety and compliance and scalability and things that are more and more sort of just glossed over because it's just so easy to these days.
Are these discussions happening in QBRs? Are they happening in, is it new kind of project work, or QBRs that leads to projects? I mean, I don't know, Alan, if you have any input there.
Not the traditional QBRs. I saw a comment there too, because the traditional QBRs are really built based on reports and output that come out of these tools that we've all stacked on top of each other and delivered to the clients. That's not where I'm finding it. In fact, I find that to be like a business discussion suppression tool in a lot of ways, because you're focused on the tech and the people you have on the call, or your SOC, your NOC, your ROC like leaders, or team leads that are in there. And I find those discussions happening in very specific agenda meetings that we put together, or going where our clients go. If they're going to events and they're learning there from industry experts about AI, showing up in those venues that's helpful to see what the executives are listening to. Yeah, but you know what, I think about some of the discussions that we've been having, and Ian, I think it's great to be on a call with you to come at it from kind of the RPA background and all of this automation background that you have. We've talked about AI being this hammer. Yeah. And this beautiful tool that we picked up. And if AI is this hammer, what's the nail that people are swinging at, or the outcome that the technology was never really built to solve? Can you give a few examples of that?
Yeah. So the hammer nail thing, the jobs to be done framework is so valuable. The challenge with AI is that AI is like 50 different hammers, right? So it's far more complex. Is it character recognition? Is it sentiment analysis? Is it deep learning? Is it machine learning? Is it screen scraping and computer vision? Is it? And so there's so many different elements of AI that. What I like about that is it sends you back to the fundamentals of, again, what are you actually trying to achieve? And you can do that directionally from just, here's a process, right? Here's invoice processing or period end closing or new client onboarding that is frictioned and a pain in the butt, and we have too many people doing it, or it's too slow, and you just work your way through it. It forces you to get into the atomic levels of that process, because then you've got 50 hammers, and you may need 4 to actually transform that business. Right now, the hammer people perceive AI to be is just the hammer with the loudest PR team. And so that hammer happens to be the frontier models and all of this magical large language models that can do all sorts of things. And their expanding scope of everything from you prompt it and it comes up with some cool answers for you, or you are co-working with it, or you are coding with it. And so even that one hammer is 3 different confusing hammers. But the way that you simplify it, for my simple brain, the way that I figure out how to assign 50 different hammer capabilities to a decision or to a discussion for it to be a useful one, is to go back to the fundamentals of what are you doing and what does good look like? What do you want to achieve?
If they don't know that, Ian, because a lot of people, when you ask them, and you and I have talked about this, I think Alan probably could validate this too. And some, a lot of times people get defensive, like, well, okay, so what are you trying to, can you give me a sense of what you're trying to accomplish? And it's like, now all of a sudden they have to think. Yeah. How important is it to have, maybe even couch it and protect their ego? Like, yes. Hey, look, let me share with you a few examples of what we see. Right. You mentioned accounts payable or this. Here's what we're seeing. Is it more tactical accounts payable? Is it more this or that? How important is it to have those anecdotes right away? Hugely important. So, Alan, when you mentioned going to the events where your clients are to hear what they're being told, I mean, all I heard was you're just playing cleanup because the client comes off of stage having just
just made some grand statements about capabilities.
Yep.
I would go to, I mean, I have this one example that sticks in my mind to this day, because of the ego element that Andrew, you said, where I was at a conference, we had a booth, this was years and years ago, and a client, an active client of mine, a huge healthcare organization, had just come around from another booth and heard some just fantastical statement from an AI company that makes literally no sense, that used a verb that isn't a verb in the AI space. And she asked me, hey, have you heard of this type of AI? And I knew that was their branding. And I actually said to her, look, my AI teams looked at it. We don't think it's a thing. It's just a branding thing, right? It's no different than, and so we're not sure that it's valuable. I basically called her baby ugly, right? She had already, in the course of leaving a booth and coming around to mine, had already attached, it imprinted on her, and she'd attached her aspirational sort of roadmap to this new thing. Yeah. And it was a tough lesson to learn. I need to be a little bit more subtle with people, which I'm not. Yeah,
there could be a good number of acronyms that don't survive, right? But we sure see no shortage of them being thrown out there.
Yes, exactly.
I want to go to another question here, Ian, because you've been involved in the automation projects, and earlier you said that you did this study and you'd follow up 2 months into a 3-month initiative, and nothing was done. So you've seen automation projects die quickly. Yeah. What is the actual cause of death most of the time? And are you seeing the same thing happen with AI?
So originally, and I think it's probably the same now, is ultimately in the early POC pilot days, and this goes back 10, 12 years, people would run a pilot or a POC just to see if it worked, just to see if it, interacted with the systems, it could get access to, what have you. And it would.
An average cost of a POC back then?
Oh, I mean, 25, 50K, sometimes a little larger. If it was generally we worked with really large organizations, but the point was, can it extract the data? Can it see the screen? Can it handle the whatever? And it would. And then we'd go to review it, and they'd say, like, yeah, it didn't save us any money, or it didn't speed up anything, or it didn't. And all of a sudden, the criteria for success were different than the initially stated criteria for success. So there's just this moving goalpost that I think was a real challenge back then. And what best you could do is point at the slide and say, well, this was the reason. We just wanted to see if it could actually access the data, because you don't have APIs, so it needed to go through looking at the screen, and it did. Now we can move on. So that was a challenge. These days, some of it is just sort of squirrel issues of just, from one moment to the next, a new model drops, and all people want to do is go get a demo or go visit the next startup or see about the next hugely funded model that. And so if you can't stick to your guns for even a few minutes, you're never going to come up with a resilient solution that actually solves a problem, because honestly, you're just more interested in the shopping experience and just the fun of sort of supposedly being in the front of this trend. And that's going to get in the way of a lot of actual meaningful progress.
Ian, Alan, what Ian just said, and I don't want to spend much time, but I just want to call out because I know you and Jonathan certainly know of Sunil Yu, but it's so analogistic, right, to the boom in cyber tools that Sunil built the cyber defense matrix for. Because his remit, Ian, he was the chief security scientist for Bank of America, and he joked around that they had a program of no cyber vendor left behind. Okay. But he had to build basically a matrix, right, Alan, to figure out, is this tool even necessary? Where does this tool fit? Because there's so much marketing hype.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Tools.
Yeah. I was a chairman of a conference that was called an Intelligent Automation Conference, because we went from robotic process automation to intelligent automation, then on to generative AI, and now onto large language models and whatever we're calling it now. And I saw this too with our clients. We had a large bank where we were doing an extensive RPA program, and a lot of the budget was pulled because of AI. They pivoted and they were focusing on AI. At this conference, the Intelligent Automation Conference, people would say, like, look, we've been running these process automation programs, and all of our leadership just took our budget because we're now focusing on Gen AI. It's all on ChatGPT now. And this was a few years ago. But, real useful foundational work around process automation, which meant understanding the process, documenting the process, re-engineering the process, like that was going on, and then was cut off in mid task because all of a sudden generative AI showed up or Copilot, which everyone thought was going to solve all their problems. And literally every massive pilot of Copilot I've ever heard about since then has underperformed and underwhelmed. And yet we just keep changing. And so that's no way to make meaningful progress.
At one point and over to Alan, we're seeing it in the public markets. And what I mean by that is, look at the crypto hype, right? With Bitcoin when it peaked at around 128 and all the altcoins. And it was right about that peak when a lot of the noise came out in the frontier models. Well, who sucked up all the market cap? As there's a direct correlation. If you chart out, right, the announcements of AI and then the memory, whether Micron or the others, you just see this vortex of cash leave crypto and literally go over to AI. So it's just a microcosm of what you just mentioned.
Well, and joke's on them, right? My entire life savings is in NFTs, and those are going to be
Great, Ian. Sounds like a good strategy.
Thank you.
Andrew, to piggyback on what you were saying about the foundational work and what Sunil talked to all of us about at Ride a Boom. I think that so many of us MSPs have resonated around the content that comes out of Ride a Boom because we're talking about the importance of using CIS controls. We're talking about using NIST 800-171, foundational frameworks to build our cybersecurity practice on. I have been hearing from different clients, IT leadership at different clients that are being directed to use NIST AI 100-1, or if they want to get the certification or the audit, ISO 42001. And so I do believe that there's important foundational pieces, whether we base them on these frameworks or we use these frameworks as MSPs, we need to look at them because I just went through another scenario. Recent client we inherited, the sales leader at that organization built out all of this AI related process for their sales under his personal account. He left and the owner's begging us, please get it all back for me. I need all of this. And we can't get it back. There's no enterprise AI rolled out. And these are, these are 50, 60, 70 person companies that are letting people play around with this, I guess, citizen type development, that's going on inside the organization, some technical, some non-technical. But maybe you could tell us a little bit more, Ian, about your book, All Hands on Tech, because you were talking about employees, right? Who spends the time? How do they spend the time? Should they spend the time?
Quickly, we have 4 more hours left on this.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then I'll give you the short version. I was fascinated by this. Absolutely loved it. Totally loved it. So in the RPA days, to give you some background, RPA, obviously we had to show up, we had to model and map processes before we codified anything into software, before we emulated those tasks. But people didn't want to pay for consultants. And so they decided we can use software to just find the opportunities. And so that's where process mining, process discovery, task mining showed up. And then there was this promise that you could just find a thing by just watching what everyone's doing with these keystrokes and then just like hit a button, it would automate. So that was happening, right? Easier, faster. At the same time, low code, no code as a concept was coming in, where you didn't have to build things from scratch. You could drag and drop and put things together. And examples were usually like, I don't know, look at Canva. You can do which, but from a software perspective, there was a democratization that became known as citizen development. those non-technical members of your organization could start to build things. And I, again, fascinated by this, so started doing research into it. Ended up wrote 2 journal articles, got one in MIT Sloan Management Review and one published in Harvard Business Review. And so then continued to expand our research on it and turned it into a book, which was called All Hands on Tech. And the premise really is, again, humans are becoming slightly more technical, technology is becoming more human. And when that cross happens, you open up a lot more of your organization to be creators, developers, data scientists, automators, and then someone came up with the term vibe coding, which I super wish I'd known before we published the damn book, because then people might have actually purchased the book. But the thing that's fascinating about it is the examples we found that were most successful were generally engineering companies. They were like the Chevrons and the Shells of the world, because the DNA of most of the staff was engineering. They were problem solvers and they were structured. But the promise here of Vibe or citizen development was your salesperson, your HR person, your CFO could finally do a thing that they know they've always needed. They were domain experts. They had solid domain expertise, and every flipping time they went to talk to IT would either put them on a roadmap, which basically meant pound sand, or they would try to solve it in a way that IT would just take it away and say, like, we know what you need, just shut up and sit down. And so most of these people felt disenfranchised. RPA's initial promise, robot for every person, you could build your own sort of little agent or robot that helps you. Agentic's now same thing. And then vibe coding even more so, that you can develop all this stuff. It's awesome and will create a tremendous amount of technical debt and an insane dumpster fire over the next 5 years, because that person didn't get hit by a bus or win the lottery. They just left. And they put this thing on their personal platform. And more people, the ones who do it, understand intimately what it is that would be great to have to get their domain done well. But what they don't understand, and there's no reason why they should understand, is security, compliance, infrastructure, scalability. Any of the things that
and we do.
Yeah.
Right. As MSPs, we do. To kind of wrap up and look at the time too, here that, we as MSPs, we're sitting in the middle of this pretty significant opportunity. We're pressured by clients. We got the vendors that want us to sell. Some of them don't even have partner programs they want us to sell. Mm-hmm. But what are 3 things you recommend an MSP really focus on and do to succeed in building an AI advisory practice?
Yeah. So so first and foremost, I think this is a renaissance for MSPs. I think the world is salivating over this massive addressable market of small and medium businesses, and MSPs are there and have been for decades and have gained the trust and the respect and the understanding. So, man, you were light years ahead already. But traditionally, you walk in, you deliver a discrete, defined, service catalog, and you show up for QBRs where they just look at the numbers for that, and then you leave. So step 1 is you got to open your aperture and just show up with a degree of curiosity and, humility, because they're not going to just start talking to you about other processes that are out of the scope. It'll be weird. There's a dissonance there to say, like, why the hell are you asking this now? That's really suspicious. So you got to figure out show and tells where you show them, hey, let's show you what we're playing with. Maybe you're playing with other stuff. Let's learn together. Because to your point, you got to separate it from the QBR. But go in with an open aperture and be curious and figure out what they're doing, because that will make you're already head and shoulders above the vendors who are pounding them with the tools they need. And you have the heritage and understanding of their business to the extent that you've been exposed to it. So that's one. Then you really have to help them sort of map, sort of the cartography of this stuff is to map the terrain that they're on and in. And so that's back to simple, process mapping or modeling, or just genuinely having a discussion where you whiteboard, what does good look like? What are you actually trying to achieve here? Because maybe we can help. Maybe we've got some point of view or perspective that can help you. That converts into a blueprint, which then is a reasonable, methodical way to approach this. And then maybe you're the right one to help them in some of that work. Maybe you're not. I think you gain trust and respect if you don't all of a sudden become the answer to every element of the blueprint and the plan. But you are a trusted advisor and partner at that point, and they will They will start to think of you for more things. They'll bring you in earlier rather than tell you we just dumped $150K on multiple subscriptions without asking your opinion at all. And then you can start to meaningfully make an impact on their operation above and beyond what you already do for them.
Yeah, very solid points. Thanks, Ian. Really appreciate that. Well, can you close out with something that most clients cringe about? If governance and documentation are the boring parts that nobody wants to fund, how do you make boring sound urgent?
It's interesting. Ultimately, if you needed a building built, you wouldn't balk at the fact that a blueprint was being designed to build that building. You would actually freak out if I just showed up and started pouring concrete randomly without any sort of plan, right? And so I think what you need to do, because clients do cringe, right? They do want stuff now, and when you talk about any sort of structure or process, that sounds long and laborious, and so everything has to be part of the AI project. Right, the clearing of the land and the drafting of the blueprint is the building project. It's the building of the building comes a little bit later, but it's still all the building project. An AI transformational program for any of your clients begins the very first second you walk in the door, and that very first question you ask about, like, are you ready for this? Talk to me about your process, your data, your tech, your talent, your governance. Like, that is the beginning of an AI journey, and be clear about that and take credit for it because you have those structures, right? You've got ITIL, you've got NIST, you've got all those frameworks that you've always embraced. This is no different. And so, yeah, I think they cringe at things that sound slow, make them sound faster, and make them sound part of the destination they already want to be in, which is some, future state agentic operating model that nobody can define for them, but you help them to start.
Great. Thanks, Ian.
Just bring in a bunch of experts, Ian. That's all you need to do.
It's a council, right? It's going to be a council because again, nobody knows their business better than they do, and you've got to respect that. Yeah. But also, nobody knows security and compliance and structure and rollout and stability like you do. And without them, insane amounts of technical debt and confusion and chaos in ways and at magnitudes that were impossible to achieve before, but now very possible.
Yeah. So. Yeah. That's I know we got to end here, but that's a real paradox of this whole thing, really, isn't it, Ian? That, there's a lot of tech debt out there, but boy, can we develop a ton of it in the next few years, can't we?
Yeah. I'll leave you with one example. There's a neighbor 3 houses down who's a CFO who's running a healthcare practice with a partner. And a few weeks ago, I was over by his house. He was showing me this vibe-coded application that he was using. Right? He DIY'd it. He'd done it himself. He built his own. So I texted him recently and asked, "How's that going?" And he said, "Well, realized that it had some constraints, but what we did is it helped me show a real developer what it is I want." And so I'm firmly of the belief that this DIY vibe code movement is going to gently evolve into a DITL movement, which is a do it, or DILT. Sorry, first time I've ever used the acronym. Just thought it up yesterday, but it's from a do it yourself to a do it like this. Where more so than any sort of whiteboard or ideation session or email that says, "Man, I'd really like a tool that does this," you can show them and say, like, "Man, just do it like this, but do it right and do it secure." And so that's what he did. And I think a lot more people will come to that realization that we'll move into the do it like this phase, highly enabled by the vibe coding that Alan discussed with that one guy who did it. But that's step one to something more robust that's actually owned and controlled by the company, because they need to, because otherwise somebody walks away with your data and your systems. So yeah, we're heading into the do it like this era, I think, which means somebody has to do it like that, which is partners, and experts.
Yeah, I think you need to go. What is it when you gosh, I can't even think. I'm drawing a blank. The DILT that the person certified CIO just put in trademark it, and you got to go trademark that.
Oh, trademark DILT, yeah. Jilt is it going to be huge? Yeah, that'll be my next book.
All right. I can see it now. Everybody,
yeah, exactly.
I could tell.
Fine. Everyone who's listening, you can't have it.
Well, Ian, thanks for a fantastic hour. It flew by. I think we could do several more of these, and would love to have you back. Appreciate everybody sitting in and being part of every Monday with us. Make it a great week ahead. Be safe, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Monday. Alan, Jonathan, thanks a million. Take care, everyone.
If you're in the Right Boom community but not in our Discord yet, you're missing where the real conversation happens. Join community.rightaboom.com to access CyberCall discussions, upcoming CPFs, boom camps, and early access to what's coming next. If you want to stay close to what's actually happening in the MSP security space, I'll see you there.